Yes, you read the episode description correctly. I have decided to quit drinking alcohol. And this was a decision that I've been thinking about now for a couple of years. And I finally decided it was time. I want to share with you why I have done this and what I am learning along the way. Welcome to the Strength, Yoga, and Freedom podcast. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Yes, this is the Strength, Yoga, and Freedom podcast, the podcast where we use the philosophy of yoga in a practical and everyday way, one small step at a time, to become happier people and to become people who are driven by purpose. My name is Justin. I am so glad that you're here. Don't forget that we have a lot of things that go on in this community that you can engage in, one of which is our free weekly newsletter. You can subscribe to that through the the description of this video if you're watching it on YouTube, or through the show notes if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app. So be sure that you take a look at those. You can also engage in listener support. You can follow me on Instagram. And I have some special discounted codes down there, especially for inexpensive journals that you can find on Amazon. And Kenzie's Sweet Treats. She is one of our members of our community, and she has a phenomenal baking business that she's launched a while ago, and her stuff is just fantastic. So she gives a discount to all of our listeners by following the link and using the code that I have down below. So I think it's pretty obvious that a vast majority of us have partaken in alcohol consumption in our lives, right? I think that's a pretty fair thing to say. Whether you started when you were a kid, a teenager, if you were in college, even later in life, alcohol is a drug that definitely is in the mainstream of our culture. And notice I used the word drug. And I'm going to keep referring to it as a drug because that's really what it is. Now, before you stop this episode, or before you say, you know what, I don't want to listen to another person kind of blather on and on about why alcohol is bad for you or why I should stop drinking, I want you to just pause and open up your heart for a few moments. Because this episode is not going to be me telling you that you should stop drinking alcohol. I'm not going to tell you that. I am also not going to tell you that you need to go cold turkey on alcohol right now. And I'm also not going to tell you that if you continue drinking that you're a bad person or that it's bad to drink alcohol. I'm not going to say those things to you. But here's what I am going to do. I'm going to talk about some proven facts related to alcohol. I'm going to talk about my relationship with alcohol, what events in my life spoke to me about my alcohol consumption, when and why I came to the realization that I needed to cut alcohol out, and also what I feel like since I've stopped. So I'm going to be talking about all of those things and the fact that this whole thing actually really has nothing to do with alcohol itself. I mean, it does to a degree, but the bigger lesson here is about purpose. And in this community, we drive our lives in the direction of purpose. And so as we continue on in this episode, this is the last episode of this podcast that's going to air in the month of July also. And in July, we've been talking about doing the things that are often hard for us to do. And so this is a hard thing that I'm going to undertake, and I'm starting to undertake, and I wanted to share this experience with you because this really is seeping with my purpose. And I'm just hoping to share this with you and you take what you want from it. That's all my intention is. So I implore you again, just open your heart and listen. My genuine hope also is that you start thinking about how you operate in your relationship with alcohol or anything else you might be thinking about changing relationship with in your life. All right. And if you haven't thought about changing your relationship with alcohol or something else, then maybe this will get you to think and take some action, because that's what we're all about here, taking the small steps to move into purpose and move into our version of happiness one day at a time. And I will say this, stopping alcohol consumption is a day-by-day process. It's not okay, we're going to do this forever, or we're going to do, for me, this has to be done on a day-by-day basis. And if you have ever struggled with an addiction, you know that breaking addictions or coming to terms with addictions or coming to terms with what you're doing in your life when it comes to relationships you have with certain things, that it is a day-by-day process. So every single day, every single one of us does things that are not good for our mind and our body. I mean, it's going to happen for the rest of our lives because we are human beings. We are living a human experience. So we are going to do things. When you walk outside and you breathe air, it's probably not going to be the best air for your body all the time, especially if you're living in the United States or Canada, and you have noticed lately with the wildfires and smoke that's been going on, that's a risk as well. So there's just always going to be things that are going to be, we're going to be doing things or partaking in things that aren't always going to be the best for our bodies. We're living this human experience. But we talk ourselves into and out of things all of the time. And so I want to make myself 100% clear. Again, this is not an episode where I am going to tell you that you absolutely should just stop drinking alcohol, or that if you don't stop, you're a bad person, or that you should moderate it, or that you should tell other people to stop drinking alcohol. If you're going to, like if you decide come October, you're going to be doing sober October or dry January, that you should just get everybody else on the bandwagon with you because you're doing it. Just because you're doing it means everybody else is going to do it too. And it's very important to have people or groups that are supporting you in your decision. There's a difference between having people supporting you and a difference between making everybody else doing what you're doing as well. All right, so we need to understand that as well. So no matter what advice or I give you or experience I've had, you need to make the best decisions for you in your life. This is about you. And that's how I really approach all of these episodes. I'm going to give you data. I'm going to give you research. I'm going to give you philosophy. I'm going to give you advice and more. But you have to make the decision to adapt whatever it is that you need to adapt into your life for your life only, period, right? This is all just me talking to you from me to you. So let's just get all the facts out of the way first when it comes to alcohol. These are facts that have been scientifically and research proven, all right? This isn't just making things up. These are facts. Number one, we know that alcohol affects everybody differently, okay? So we know that. And when you drink, it may take you longer to feel buzzed or tipsy than another person. So we all know that alcohol affects everybody differently. Number two, more than half of all adults have a family history with alcoholism, and around 7 million children live in a home where alcohol usage is prevalent. That's in the United States. 7 million children are living in a home where alcohol usage is prevalent. Number three, we know that alcohol is a depressant, and it will slow down your nervous system so that you will feel euphoric, you'll feel confident, you don't have the same kind of like blocking system or filtration system. And that really means that you're willing to do more risky things when you have had a lot to drink or you are drunk. And these are the things that maybe you would not normally do when you are sober and have not had anything to drink. Number four, we know that alcohol causes a loss of memory. That's why we have blackouts. You lose coordination. You lose clear speaking patterns. That's all proven. And then we also know that different amounts of alcohol impact inflammation, stress, hormones, mood, your gut microbe, and the neurodegeneration of the brain, which to me, that's a little scary, okay? Because I like my brain to be intact, Lord knows. But that to me is a little scary. So those are some facts, but I don't want to go over any more facts now. I think it's clear that we know that drinking alcohol has harmful side effects, but so does a lot of other things that we do, right? Like I mentioned about the air before, okay? Walking down the street in your neighborhood has a risk. Getting into your car has a risk. Being in a public place has a risk. Well, not washing your hands has risks. Not exercising has risks. Going into a pool when you don't know how to swim has risks. That doesn't mean that we don't do those things, right? It doesn't mean we shouldn't do those things. I'm not telling you to do something. Obviously, I'm not telling you to go out and do something you're not skilled in, like swimming. If you can't swim, you probably shouldn't get into a pool. Like, you need to exercise common sense when it comes to that too. But it doesn't mean, just because there's these risks, doesn't mean we just don't do those things. You are the captain of your ship. You get to decide what daily risks you are willing to take, and so do I. So I want to talk to you about my relationship with alcohol, my relationship first and foremost, so we can understand where the decision for me came to stop drinking. Where did that come from? I started drinking alcohol when I was in my late teens. I don't remember how old I was. It wasn't very profound. I would have drinks here or there, but it was nothing in my late teens that caused me to feel drunk or to feel kind of out of control. Or to even feel hungover the next day. But as the years went on, the drinking increased. And I remember the first time I actually felt drunk. There was a local bar where I grew up. It changed names like 57 times. Do you have those local bars, or a bar that's in your town that, you know, every year or so it changes names or changes ownership or something? And I remember growing up in this town, and that was the first time I ever actually went out with several people. I was in college at this time, and I was with a group of friends and their friends. I actually was over 21 at this time. I might have been getting ready to turn 22. But from what I recall, I don't think I was getting ready to turn 22. I think I had just turned 21 a few months ago. So I might have been, it was between 21 and 22. But all I remember to this day is actually being I remember this clear as day. It was being carried out of my car when I lived in my house where I grew up. In the driveway, I was carried into my house that night that I went to this place and drank. And as the years went on, I always look back on this experience, like, actually with tons of laughter and tons of fun. I thought it was really fun. It was fun. Like, I had a grand time. Even now, thinking about that day and the people and the feeling, I had a fucking fantastic time. So I thought, you know what? I could continue to drink. I can continue to have hangovers. I can handle this. Even now, the me that's sitting here talking to you now thinks that was so much fun that I could continue to do that. That is one of the reasons why I've decided to stop, but we'll go into that in a minute. But all right, so here we are drinking and having hangovers. And then I started to teach high school because I graduated from college and I had a teaching degree, and I started to teach. And it really wasn't an option for me to have hangovers anymore because I had to get up early and go to school and teach 160 kids a day. So I actually stopped drinking then. I actually quit. And I was dating someone at the time who also did not drink. So there was no drinking anymore. I just stopped. And then summer rolled around after that first school year, and I started to go to events. I started to go to gatherings. I started to go wherever it was, eating out, whatever. And I would drink again until I got drunk, because I thought, what's the goal in drinking, or what's the purpose of drinking if I'm not going to get drunk? I don't care about the taste. Yeah, alcohol tastes good. Wine tastes good. Mixed drinks taste good. Vodka tastes good with this or that or that, But I wanted to drink to get drunk. And then I would always wade through that hangover the next day. I would just literally be wading through it. And as the years went on, the back and forth with alcohol continued. It just continued. I felt like I was in control and then not in control. I would say, all right, I'm only having a few, and then I would have way more than just a few. Then the shots would get poured and the control was gone. And then I would stop for a while and I would say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I would come back to it, and back and forth and back and forth. I would have periods of time where I didn't drink at all. And then I would have periods of time where I did drink a lot. And I just thought, this is kind of how it's going to go. I remember, this is funny. I remember when I first thought I actually had a problem with alcohol. This is when I actually first thought there was something wrong. For me, I was in Walt Disney World. This was before For those of you that are Walt Disney World fans or have been to Walt Disney World and you remember that for a long time there was no alcohol at the Magic Kingdom Park. Magic Kingdom Park is the park in Walt Disney World that has the castle, and it has Dumbo the flying elephant, and it has Fantasyland, and it has It's a Small World, and all those kind of classic Disney attractions. For the longest time, there was no alcohol in Magic Kingdom. In order to drink alcohol, you had to go to one of the other parks. And so I kept thinking to myself, how am I going to go to Magic Kingdom and have fun if I can't have a beer? This is what I thought to myself. And you know what I did? I jumped on the monorail, went to Epcot, I went back towards the back of the park where you can get into the international show place where all the countries are, and I would go through there and I would go get beer and alcohol and then come back to Magic Kingdom just so that I could be drunk. And that was way before there were park reservations and you can only hop after this time and all the different rules that are in place now. This was when you could just park hop all over the place. And so I knew even then that I had a problem, but I didn't care. I didn't care. I thought that in order to have fun, anywhere I went, I had to have alcohol. So every time I went somewhere, alcohol was involved. I remember going to Cedar Point. So for those of you that have been following me for a little while, you know I'm a theme park fan. And Cedar Point is a one of the biggest amusement parks out there for ride enthusiasts. Those of us who love a lot of roller coasters and things. It's got a big collection of them, and it's in northern Ohio. And so I would go there, and I remember the year they put in one of their new roller coasters, Gatekeeper, which was over the it's over the entrance of the park when you walk in, over the where you scan your tickets and so on. And I remember going there the year it was brand new, and I was drinking so much during the day that when I went on it, I said to the people that I was with, I went on it for the very first time, it was brand new, and I said, I have no idea what's happening right now. We were like going up the lift hill, and I was like, I have no idea what in the world is happening right now. I was so out of my mind, and the whole experience was a blur. The first time I ever went on that ride was a blur. The first time. The first time I could experience different sensations on a brand new roller coaster, which I love doing, I was drunk and I had zero idea what happened. So then I started practicing yoga about 5 years ago. And I would go to work during the day, and then I would maybe go to the bar and have drinks, and then I would go to take yoga. And my rationalization was, because I was doing yoga, that I could drink because the yoga would counteract it. I would drive to people's houses and have to have beers before I would go to their houses because I was nervous to go to their house and be in a setting with other people. Or I felt like I didn't want to be going to this party, but in order to go to that party, I had to drink before so that I would be able to tolerate who was at the party and be around people and be able to socialize and be able to relax, be able to let my guard down, be able to be me, or, you know, loosen up, or all the things we say when we want to drink alcohol, or all those reasons we give ourselves. You know, alcohol helps me to open up, alcohol helps me to do this, alcohol helps me to do that. Those were all the things I would say to myself. Especially if I was going to date someone, I had to have alcohol because I felt like I couldn't handle it on my own without that. And so I kind of skated by, I did okay, and it didn't matter. I was 250 pounds then, 250 pounds. I was a mess, but I didn't care. I didn't care. I had horrible anxiety, horrible depression, didn't care. And then one night I went out and I got drunk and I slammed into a truck in front of me. Now, let me talk to you about that night for just a second, because this isn't even when I decided to stop drinking, was during this episode. Here's what happened. I was driving home, and the way I usually go home was closed. So I had to divert, and I apparently, from what I was told, fell asleep at the wheel and hit the back of this truck. Now, no one was injured except for maybe just a couple of bumps or bruises, very, very minor. But my car was fixable, but it was in very, very bad shape. So here's what I do remember. So what happened was, that's what happened. Apparently I fell asleep at the wheel and hit the back of this truck. Those are the facts. That's what happened. But here's what I remember. I remember leaving the bar, and I had been drinking all night. I left the bar, and then I remember the police handcuffing me. I remember then sitting at the local state highway patrol, and I remember also having a taxi drive me home. I lived here where I am now in my house, and I remember having a taxi, not an Uber, not a Lyft, because guess where my phone was? In the car that was now being impounded and taken to, you know, the lot where you have to go pick up your car and spend tons of money because you don't have a license anymore, and you know how that all goes. Anybody who's ever experienced that, which is horrifying. So my phone's there, so I had a taxi that had the police call a taxi, and I had just a little bit of money in my pocket to pay him, but I couldn't go get any money. I mean, like, there was nothing, right? So I really remember nothing else. Now, even after getting that DUI and having all of those ramifications, financial, mental, social, whatever it was, even after all of that, which for those of you who have ever had to deal with something like that, you know how horrible that impacts everything in your life. It's just absolutely crazy. But even after that, I still continued to drink. And do you want to know why? Because I felt like I had control. I just felt like this is a part of life that I have to deal with, that I've reached this point, I've been through the worst, and I can start to, okay, fine, I can control this. And then after that happened and as the days went on, I started to feel like I wanted to come off of my anxiety and depression medication and start using medical marijuana. From the, you know, advice of my medical professionals that I talk to, you know, I'm not suggesting you should do that. You need to talk to any doctor or medical professional before switching off any kind of medications or anything. But when I started using medical marijuana, the transition away from alcohol started to happen without me knowing it. I was turning more to that versus using alcohol. And so inadvertently, I stopped that heavier drinking pattern where I would drink so much and then be hungover the next day and have to live with that, or feel like all the things I just described to you, feeling nervous when I went places. It was starting to get replaced a little bit with marijuana, but also because of the switch in the body chemistry for me off of the medication, I had really no urge at that point to drink all the time. And so once that happened, I started to go through my yoga teacher training. I kind of started to get my life together. I started to realize I had a bigger purpose. Things were starting to help me. I'm not suggesting marijuana was the reason. That's not what happened. There were other things going on in my personal life. There were things that I had to come to terms with. I started to do all the things I'm teaching you now on this podcast, like morning routines and evening routines, and, you know, analyzing friendships and relationships and doing things that you're afraid of doing that you should do, and kind of getting my life in check. But I was still drinking here and there. And that brings us to the current version of my life, which is where we're at now. And so what kind of drinker would I classify myself as now? Well, I would say prior to me kind of getting my life together and maybe using the weed a little bit more and getting off medications and starting to, you know, get into groups and start doing self-care and self-work, I would say prior to all of that, I was a very heavy drinker. I would have maybe 20 drinks a week or so. So that's a lot of drinking, I think, for me. That was a lot of drinking. So now in the past 3 years or so, maybe 2 to 3 years after this whole change started, I would consider myself a light or a social drinker, where maybe I would have between 0 and 5 drinks per week on average. Sometimes I would actually go an entire month without having any alcohol. But here's what started to happen in that phase, which is really where this happened in this current part of my life. This is what started to happen. I still felt as though I wanted to drink because it tasted good, maybe because I would feel good and have these, like, you know, able to relax a little bit and be social. Maybe I thought because it was normal to celebrate with alcohol. Like, how could you go to someone's birthday and not have a drink? Maybe I thought I wanted to fit in. But every time I would drink, in this capacity, where again, we're talking about 0 to 5 per week, maybe, and there were weeks, a lot of weeks of 0, I would still feel like I would have mood shifts, I would have productivity shifts, and I would have these bouts of depression. I was becoming, now remember, I was trying to get my life together at the same time here, so I was becoming more aware of how I was operating, mainly due, again, to the yoga practice and all of that. And I thought, okay, all right, we're okay now. I can have some drinks here and there and I'll be just fine. I've got control over this. Just a few, it's just a drink or two. Who really cares? It's gonna be just fine. But guess what a drink or two always turned into? Wanting a drink or two the next day, and then maybe wanting a drink or two the next day. Or I would drink a few drinks, even maybe if I would just go out to lunch or out to dinner, and I would literally feel my body changing, like in front of me. I'm sitting there, and after I would have it, I would feel just this shift of energy in my entire body. And my stomach and my gut patterns changed. My mood changed. My appetite would be suppressed, which I don't like because I love food. I love it. Even if I drank and then maybe smoked a little bit of weed, I would still have appetite suppression. I couldn't concentrate. I felt out of it. Now, this is just me having a couple drinks. You see, my relationship with alcohol is a relationship that alcohol always had the upper hand. Maybe you are someone who's able to drink a drink or two and just be fine. And that is awesome. I want to hold on to you and I want to hug you and I want to be you, right? I have jealousy for that. I just can't have that. Maybe you can have a glass of wine every night and you're great. It doesn't affect you. Remember what I said at the beginning. Alcohol affects everybody differently. But this is not me. And I realized something. It really isn't alcohol that's the problem. It's the actual act of picking up a drink because I felt like I have to or I should. And then it's the back and forth game that I would play over and over, like, why am I allowing myself to have the drinks? Why am I not allowing myself to have the drink? How many drinks am I going to allow? You've had more than 2. And you play that game back and forth in your head and you beat yourself up over it. Because it goes deeper than just the drink. It's the fact that there is something that I was running from, that the alcohol could actually numb. I remember being at a theme park earlier this summer and having a couple drinks just because it rained. Just because it rained. And I was like, well, what am I going to do now? We don't have anything to do, so I might as well just have a drink. So thinking about that now, why did I feel like I had a drink? I was bored. I felt like there was nothing else I could do with my time. So I was seeking it out. But I don't want to feel like that anymore. I don't want to feel those things. I want to be able to feel the natural things. I want to be able to feel everything. I am a human being who wants to experience life to the fullest. And using alcohol to experience life to the fullest is not going to allow me to live life to the fullest. It's not, because it is a false sense of reality. For me, I discovered that when you hear people say these things, I use alcohol to have fun, I use alcohol to loosen up, I use alcohol to be more social, I use alcohol to relax, I use alcohol to unwind after being stressed all day, then what you're basically doing is you're saying that you put yourself into situations that you naturally don't want to put yourself into, so you use the alcohol to numb, to cope with, or to handle those situations, like a stressful day at work. A stressful day at work is going to impact every person on the planet who works. If you are using alcohol to numb the stressful feeling, you are basically saying, I do not want to feel this stress, handle this stress, cope with this stress, so I'm going to turn to alcohol instead, and that will help me. Who cares about the ramifications? I'm just going to do it. Now, what about when you go to a concert? Think about this. I like concerts, but here's what I don't like about concerts. Driving into concerts because there's a bajillion cars, and walking to cars leaving puts me in a dangerous position. I'm not saying that if you don't want to go to, if you like concerts, it sucks. Go to a concert. What I'm saying for me is I was using alcohol to not feel the frustrations of the traffic, of being in a sea of people, of seeing other people drinking when I'm not drinking. You see, if I really don't like concerts, why am I using alcohol to go to a concert? It means I don't like concerts. It means I just like alcohol. So I could just sit here and drink the alcohol. You see, when it comes to concerts, you and your friends can, if you don't want to go to a concert, maybe you and your friends would open up 5 bottles of wine, get your neighbors to come out, sing and dance, and listen to that in the parking lot. That's a concert. Do you really want to do that? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. So this is why I chose to stop drinking, because I felt that I was trying to force experiences that I really don't want to experience or that really don't interest me. Concerts, like I said, all right, they might be fun, but in general for me, they're not really a good time. If I want to have dinner in a restaurant, do I have to drink in order to enjoy the food or the company? If I do need to drink to do that, then I don't want to go out to eat, and I don't want to enjoy any kind of company. I don't want the company. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. Now here's where it gets really interesting. We know that with 100% accuracy that people want to do the things that they want to do, right? We know this. If you're sitting here now listening to this or watching this and you're saying, well, I want to drink, you're going to drink because you want to. Or if I want to wear this color shirt, you're going to wear that color. You're going to do what you want to do, which you should do what you want to do. You're a human. You should be your authentic self all the time. We know this. So if you tell someone to just stop drinking, just don't do it anymore because it sucks or it's bad for you or you're making these mistakes or whatever. In most cases, it doesn't work, right? In most cases, it doesn't work. Now, again, we do have to apply common sense when we're talking about someone who has an issue where they're putting their life in jeopardy, you know, and we have to deal with interventions in those types of situations. But I'm not talking about severity, that kind of severity here. We're talking about using it kind of recreationally to deal with things that we don't want to deal with. And it really kind of makes us feel safe, because those of us who struggle with like depression and anxiety or PTSD or trauma or whatever it is, it feels unhealthy, and it is unhealthy for us sometimes to engage in things that don't make us feel safe. So if you have anxiety, you want to engage in things that make you feel safe. Now, if I need to use alcohol to make myself feel safe, then I'm lying to myself on 2 levels. Number 1, I'm basically saying to myself, hey, Justin, I can't take any risks without alcohol. Now, that's complete bullshit. I can still take risks, right? Number 2, I'm also lying to myself by saying that I am not enough and I need this drug to cope with life. Why am I not enough? Why? Why am I not enough? Of course I'm enough. Of course I am enough. Now, some of this might even apply to something else you're using that might not be alcohol. It might be pornography. It might be shopping. It might be another drug. Maybe marijuana is one of those drugs for you. So it depends on the situation, how you use it. What are you using to cope with life? The purpose. What is the purpose behind why you're doing it? There are many things that help me cope with life that are non-alcohol related. Trust me, no matter what I may be doing, it comes down to the purpose. And that's where it gets really fascinating. There's a quote out there. I can't remember it word for word, but I'm going to paraphrase it. And it is, if you do something that feels really exciting before and during, but afterwards it feels like shit, then you're not aligned with your purpose. However, if you do something that feels scary, or that you have to take a risk, or It will provide an outcome afterward that is going to propel you forward or up or towards your goals or everything you've ever wanted in your life. That is aligned with your purpose. So you can insert anything into that, right? Do I feel wonderful after drinking alcohol? Never. I never feel great after drinking alcohol. I don't like waking up the next day with hangovers. I feel like I lose days when I have hangovers. I don't want to lose a day. Our time is a gift. I don't want to throw that gift away. But do I feel wonderful after taking a yoga class? Every single time I do. Do I want to go to yoga every day? Do I want to do side planks and high planks and upward dogs and balancing and all these other things and sweat my brains out? It's uncomfortable, but I always feel good after. So I know that's aligned with my purpose. You are most likely the first person who will say to yourself or someone else, oh, I can't get up when the alarm goes off. I have to press snooze. It's hard. I'm trying, but it's hard. I just like to roll over and then look at my phone. But you can. You can wake up when the alarm goes off. And do you know why you can? Because you can grab the alcohol. There's not alcohol in this thermos that I'm drinking out of. If you're watching this on YouTube, there's water in here. But you can grab something and drink it, but you can't get up when the alarm goes off. You can do that. It's in your head that you cannot do that. Remember, we like to do things that are easy. Giving up alcohol is not easy, but I don't want to feel like I cannot experience my life through a clear lens. I don't want to feel like that. I also want to be able to be as amazing of a friend, a colleague, a partner, a teacher, a human that I can be for not only me, first and foremost, but for everyone else who's around me. That's my purpose. I feel like if I use alcohol in my life, I can't be that for other people. And I can't be that for me. Now, what have I felt like since I've stopped? I haven't been totally free of it yet, really for more than 2 weeks as I'm filming this. But by the time you see it, it will be well over a month that I will have stopped drinking. I have noticed that after I decided to stop, I had 2 really, really tough days of depression. So what happened was I had 3 drinks or so for 3 days in a row, and that's when I decided to stop. And so I basically had 9 drinks over a 3-day period, and that's when I made the decision to stop. And about 5 days after that, I had 2 really bad days of depression. But it lifted because I had support, I worked through it, I had the tools I needed, I used the tools that I have. And so there was that bit of depression. I also have noticed this, that I have always, and now it's even more clear to me, that if others are drinking and I'm not, I don't like to be around them when they change into other people. Now, do you know what I'm talking about here? When you're around other people and you know that moment where someone changes into another version of themselves. In fact, I have known people, and I myself have said that I have an alter ego, or they'll say that they have a drunk alter ego. I kind of, looking back on that, need to forgive myself for that, because I don't really care to be around someone who isn't their true self. And I don't like when I'm not my true self anymore. And when you drink alcohol, you are not your normal self, your true authentic self. So I'm almost like, well, wait a minute, where did the real you go when you're with someone who's drinking? Do you ever have that friend when that moment happens, the emotions start, or they don't let you talk anymore, and they're all talking, the slurring of the speech starts, they can't, and then you become a caretaker because this other person has now lost control. When the drunk you falsely proclaims that this is the real version of you without the filter, it's very uncomfortable, because the real version of you that you think you are when you drink is really not the real version of you. It is a version of you that is enhanced by a drug That's not the real you. The real you is the sober you. The you that maybe doesn't want to deal with certain things or can't deal with things or don't have the tools to deal with certain things. You are willing to take more risks when you're drunk because you aren't as afraid. But you can do those things when you are sober too. If you figure out your purpose, your alignment. You certainly, when you're sober, don't slur your speech all day. You don't cry all day, every day. And if you are, that might be a symptom of something else going on. You might tell things like tell people you love that, when you're drinking a lot and you tell everybody you love them so much, or you become touchy-feely or whatever. That's not really the real version of you. That's your body doing the things that it just wants to do on a whim that you have no block for. And that's not the real version of you. That's not your authentic self. If you're around people that like to be sober all the time, and then you're around people who change their personality, they change the way that they speak or see you or see themselves, you're noticing a huge difference between the two. And then you start to decide, gee, I don't know if I want to be around people who change who they are when they're drinking alcohol. I don't like to be around that. I don't like to be around inauthentic people. And when you drink alcohol, you're not your authentic self anymore. Another thing I've noticed is I feel sad. I really do. Alcohol is everywhere. Everywhere I go, and it's really hard for me. And I know it's a social thing that I'm missing too. So this is really hard for me. So if you've been sober for a while and you have some tips on this one, put them in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube, or connect with me on Instagram and share it with me in my DMs, because I want to know what you're doing to help you cope with that social aspect, because I'm still working through that. And lastly, I actually don't know if this is going to be permanent for me or if this is going to be a very, very long break. Why? Because I'm taking it day by day. But I have set a bare minimum, and that is 130 days. Now, again, as I'm recording this, that 130 days started a couple of weeks ago, but when you see this, almost 30 of those days will have already gone by. So I want to see if my relationship with alcohol changes as I'm not grasping for it or feel like I need to use it socially, which is the hardest part for me. Even when those days have all passed, those 130 days have all passed, I want to see where I am. And I'm going to film another video and record another podcast episode to kind of see where I am at that time. To wrap this up, I want to remind you one more time. I'm not suggesting that you should just stop drinking altogether or go cold turkey. And I'm not suggesting that drinking alcohol is the worst thing ever and you should never do it and you're a horrible I'm not saying any of that. For 25 years, I've drank on and off. Okay? And I feel like I need to be the best version of myself that I need to be and that I can be. And that right now does not include regular or semi-regular alcohol consumption. So I can't wait to see where this goes. And until next week when we meet again, because remember, we are only now doing one episode per week and it will come out on Tuesdays. Until we meet again, I hope you take a look at your relationship with something that kind of feels shitty for you after you do it, like alcohol maybe. And is there something you can do to change it or modify it or stop doing it depending on what works for you? And it might not be alcohol. Think about the relationship you have and if it could be changed, if you need it to change. It's all about your purpose. And if you know your purpose and you know what you're trying to do in the current part of your life where you're driving towards a purpose, the answer is going to come to you. So until next week, I hope you give that a little bit of thought. And I can't wait to connect with you again next week. And I can't wait to read your comments on what you say about this on YouTube or, again, connecting with me. So until then, next week, I hope that you enjoy every single bit of happiness that comes your way every day. You deserve it. See you soon.